Toronto's suburban home prices are taking a hit, dropping in value the past couple of months. I'm going to dig into some of the numbers to take a look at what areas of the Toronto area, what municipalities are seeing the biggest decline in sales and prices. My name is John Pasalis, president at Realosophy Realty. Catch all my latest writings on Toronto's housing market at movesmartly.com. If you find this video helpful, please hit the like button and subscribe to stay up to date on all my latest videos. So I've been talking about sort of this decline in demand in the Toronto area's housing market the past couple of months. You know, one of the best ways to see it is by looking at changes in weekly sales. I mean, we don't normally look at housing data on a week over week basis. You know, usually monthly is fine. But when the market's changing relatively quickly, it can be very helpful because the start of a month can actually be quite different from the end of the month. And when we sort of aggregate them, things might look fine, but we're missing the fact that sales started to plummet in the second half of the month. So when we look at sales overall for low-rise homes, in this next chart in red, we can kind of see weekly that sales have actually been trending down since the beginning of March. You know, and again, this is not a typical trend. Typically, sales increase as we move into the spring market. They fell in 2020 because of the lockdown, but typically we see them increase, and that's the exact opposite of what's happening. And then when we look at the change in prices have been declining as well. I mean, they peaked at just under 1.7 million in February and have been declining to around 1.5 million right now. So, you know, I talked about in another video sort of what's been putting this downward pressure on prices. But right now, I want to kind of take a look at some of the municipalities in the GTA to look at some of the areas that have been hit the hardest. And when we look at the decline in sales between March and April, so that's just 1 month, you know, again, this is a month usually where sales are up 8%. And we're seeing here that sales are down on average for low-rise homes about 25%, and some areas much more than 25%. I mean, some areas like Pickering and Oshawa, Vaughan, Aurora, you know, 30+%. Or in that range, so significant decline in sales. And again, I'm focusing on low-rise homes right now, primarily because this is the segment of the market that's been more impacted price-wise. Condominiums have not felt that downward pressure on prices yet. So I wanted to kind of look at what's going on. When we look at Toronto for some context, interestingly enough, it's the best performing area if you want to think about it. So sales are down about just over 15% in Toronto, and that's the best when compared to all of the suburban markets, right? And one of the reasons why demand is a little bit stronger in Toronto is because prices did not surge the way they did in the suburbs the past 2 years, right? Suburb prices exploded like close to 50% or so. Downtown Toronto prices did not. Which means today they're kind of a better value than they were 2 years ago because suburban house prices are so much more expensive. And that's one of the reasons why City of Toronto, in particular the core, has performed a little bit better. Now, when we look at the change in median prices, this next chart, I'm comparing the median price in February compared to the median price in April. I use February because February is the peak of the market. So we wanted to see how prices have changed. I use the median because some of these samples are small and can be skewed by outliers, so the averages can be a little bit misleading. But this shows us sort of the change in median price, with some areas, you know, declining just over 4% in the case of the City of Toronto, and other areas 10, 12, 14% decline in median house prices. Now, again, we have to kind of take this with a grain of salt. I mean, it doesn't mean every home in Oshawa, for example, is down 19% or 17%. This is just a kind of a snapshot of the overall market, but it kind of gives us some clues into what's going on the ground. I mean, you can kind of see probably the suburban market is clearly a little bit more sluggish and more impacted than home prices in the City of Toronto, for example. And out of all the suburban markets, Durham is taking a bit of a hit right now. And we can kind of see that in sort of the decline in both sales and prices. So, you know, this is going to kind of continue until we have a lot of the current sellers who need to sell unload their homes and kind of, you know, don't have that pressure, and we see some stability in the market. But that's probably not going to be for another month or so. But these are the dynamics we're keeping on right now. This softening in suburban market, this is creating a lot of pressure for sellers. And even for our buyers, a lot of our buyers want some value. They want to get a bit of a deal. If they're buying right now, they almost want to buy below the comparables to price in even a further discount. So these are the things that we're seeing on the ground, especially in some of the slowing markets, and things that buyers needs to be mindful of as well when they're active in this market. I hope you find that video helpful. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments below or send me an email at askjohn@movesmartly.com.